Hello everybody, welcome back to another YouTube video. Today is going to be one of my favorite types of YouTube videos. I think I've only done it twice, 3 times on my channel, but it probably says it in the title. Today we are going to be doing a tier list. More specifically, we are going to be doing a Percy Jackson tier list, and even more specifically than that, we are going to be doing a tier list of characters in The Lost Hero. If you're new here, or if you are unaware, I am a very big Percy Jackson fan, but one of the things that I have been the most ashamed of in my Percy Jackson career, if you will, is that I never read the Heroes of Olympus series. I know, okay? It's blasphemous, and I've been ashamed to admit it. But on the bright side, since I have never read them, I now get to read them for the first time with you guys via reading vlogs, which has been really, really fun. If you haven't watched it, you should absolutely go watch my reading vlog of The Lost Hero, either before or after this, I don't know. If you don't want to get spoiled for who my favorite characters are and you want to watch me figure out who my favorite characters are in this book, I would go watch the reading vlog first, but it's not necessary, right? I just started reading Son of Neptune this past week. If you are somebody who doesn't want to wait a couple of weeks to see that reading vlog, you can join my Patreon, and I upload my daily updates as I'm reading the book over on Patreon. And those updates probably come about once, maybe twice a week, depending on how much reading I can do. But yeah, I figured it'd be really fun to do certain types of videos as I finish each book. So today we are going to be doing a tier list of all of the characters in the Lost Hero book. Now, okay, it may not be every single character. I didn't include people that are barely in it, like Clarice is in it for 5 seconds at the end. I didn't include people that are just barely in the book because they didn't really feel necessary to me. I included the characters that I just remembered the most off the top of my head. So if I forgot somebody that was in the book, relax, it's going to be okay. And I also feel like I need to say this every time I do a tier list. If I don't like one of your favorite characters, it's okay. It's just a tier list. If I put a character that you really, really, really don't like higher than you would, it's okay. It's just my tier list. It's gonna be very opinionated. So I just feel like I have to give that spiel every time I do a tier list. Because one time I did a tier list for Percy Jackson characters after the show came out, for Percy Jackson season 1 characters. Those comments were not pretty. Not pretty. Let's jump into it. Let's get into it. Also, for the sake of cohesiveness, I did use all of the original Rick Riordan art for these characters. When you go on Wiki Riordan, these are the pictures that show up. Even though these are absolutely not how I pictured more than half of these characters. When I was reading Annabeth, it's really funny. You can see it in the reading vlog. A girl shows up and they're describing her as a girl with blonde hair. And I'm like, oh, okay, new character alert. And then someone calls her by her name and they call her Annabeth. And I'm like, my bad. I absolutely forgot that Annabeth is blonde in the books. Because I was just picturing Leah. Similar for Jason. Once I found out that Jason was Thalia's sister, he was black in my mind. I was picturing somebody who looked exactly like Tamara Smart, but with blonde hair on a dude. So, although I am using the character art from Wiki Riordan, I just thought I'd shout out that this is not necessarily how I pictured the characters while I was reading. Oh, and the last little speech I'm gonna give, I'm going to mispronounce names probably in a second. Don't worry about it. Just enjoy the tier list. You don't have to correct my pronunciation in the comments, or if you do, just be nice about it because I'm not the best when it comes to pronouncing names, especially if they're Greek. So let's get into it. First, let's go over the tiers. These are kind of similar to the tiers that I did in my last tier list video, which is me ranking all of the Sea of Monsters characters, but I changed some of them up a little bit for variation. God tier is still the #1 tier. That name was a little too good for me to get rid of. Next, we have Half-Blood, Half-Best. That tier is going to be for characters that are really good characters, even great characters. But they're not my favorites. They're not the most important to me. but I like them. Then we have demigod divas. These are going to be like characters that it's possible they're not the best characters, whether that be they're not the best written characters or they're not the best like morally correct characters, but they have a little bit of diva in them. And I have to respect a diva. I do. Then we have miserably mortal, which are going to be characters that are just like, you suck. Like, you're kind of lame. I don't really care about you. Odds are I'm going to forget your name in a month, more likely than not. And then Tartarus trash. Those are just going to be characters that I really, really don't care about. Either I hate them or they're just like so pointless to me that it's like someone has to go in the bottom tier and unfortunately you are that character, right? So now that we have our tiers sorted out, let's get into the tier list. The first person we have is Aeolus. Now, from what I remember, he's like the master of winds. He's a little bit kooky in the head. And I think we find out at the end that he was being manipulated by Chione and Gia, right? I don't know if I'm remembering that correctly. I read the book like 3 weeks ago. So I'm gonna put him in miserably mortal just because, like, especially right now off the top of my head, I'm not remembering too much about him. I just remember like the whole book we spent waiting for the characters to get to him, and then by the end, like, it wasn't really all that groundbreaking, if I'm remembering correctly. Next, we have Annabeth. Now, this is tricky because I am doing this ranking based on the characters within the book, right? So not only with just my knowledge up until The Lost Hero, because I just started Son of Neptune. Like, I don't know where some of these characters go in the rest of the book series. And I'm not really using the past Percy Jackson books because a lot of these characters aren't in those books. So I'm really just looking at these characters within The Lost Hero. That being said, Annabeth is not the most prominent character in this book. Like, she's there, and I got excited because I know her, but once Jason, Leo, and Piper leave, like, she's not really there all that much. So I think I'm gonna put her in half blood, half best. That feels wrong, but like, she's just not there throughout a lot of the book. And I hope that makes sense to people watching this. Next, we have Boreas. I think that's how you say his name. He's the dude that lives in Canada. Shout out to the Canadians. He speaks French because he is from Quebec, which I thought was very funny. Unfortunately, from what I do remember about him, he has killed a lot of demigods. Killed, frozen, whatever. And I know that he did that because Aeolus was telling him to do that. And Aeolus was telling him to do that because I think Gia was telling Aeolus to tell Boreas to do that. Guys, he's gonna go in miserably mortal as well. Okay, these two dudes, the wind freaks, I couldn't care less, really. And maybe that's a hot take. They're just like, it's kind of like when you watch a movie and there's the main villain, and then you also have to deal with like the secondary villains, and you normally come out of the movie being like, too many villains, we could cut the secondary villains, and I feel like it'd be a little bit better. That's kind of how I feel about these two dudes being removed from the book. Like, it's been a couple weeks since I read it, so my memory is not the sharpest, but that's just how I'm feeling right now, okay? Next, we have Butch. Butch is in this book even less than Annabeth, but I'll tell you one thing about Butch that I love. He is a son of Iris, and I think that that deserves a demigod diva spot. I mentioned this in my reading blog, and it was when I was trying to guess who Jason, Piper, and Leo's like godly parents were. And I think when I was trying to guess Jason's, I was like, I don't think his godly parent is going to be a woman because there is a pattern with Rick. And that pattern tends to be, hey, if you're a dude, your godly parent is a guy. And if you're a girl, your godly parent is a woman. And I like that Butch breaks that pattern. So Butch is a diva. Also, being son of Iris, very diva of him. Love him. Okay, moving on. Next, we have Calais. Guys, I hate these names. I hate them a lot, okay? He is one of the sons of Boreas, but also he's really mean to Leo. And not to spoil the tier list, but I adore Leo. So he actually is going to be our first entry into Tartarus trash. I hate him. And I also can't pronounce his name, so that's why he gets bottom of the tier list. Next, we have Clovis. Clovis is the son of Hypnos, god of sleep. And when I read that, I remember thinking, that is so diva. I love that. If I wasn't a very, very strong daughter of Athena, I would 100% consider making myself daughter of Hypnos. Because one thing about me, I love to sleep. It's really hard to wake me up. I'm a very heavy sleeper. I will fall asleep anywhere. I love to sleep. What can I say? So while Clovis is barely in the book as well, Clovis also gets demigod diva because kind of an iconic godly parent, if you ask me. Next, we have Drew. And speaking of demigods who are not going to be divas, Drew, babe, your Tartarus trash. She was the worst. I hated her for multiple reasons, but one of the reasons I hated her the most is I've always thought that children of Aphrodite were like done dirty in the original like Percy Jackson books because they were kind of just like described as beautiful and that was it. And their house was described as pink, which backfired on Rick because now we live in a post-Barbie world. And now living in a Barbie house is kind of iconic. So that really backfired on Rick. But Drew is like the worst version of an Aphrodite kid ever, and it makes me upset that somebody could go and take like the Who is My Godly Parent quiz and get Child of Aphrodite and think that they're anything like this. That's actually one of the reasons why I like Piper a lot, because as you guys know, Piper is a daughter of Aphrodite, but the way that they portray Piper and show Piper's like skills, she makes Children of Aphrodite like 10 times cooler. And I was really happy that like Children of Aphrodite got like very, very awesome representation, I guess, through Piper. So Drew, you suck. And you didn't even have a good like character turnaround. Like you still sucked by the end. So you're at the bottom. Next, we have Dylan. Dylan is from the beginning of the book. He is one of the Venti. And guess what? He's going right down here. He is also going to be Tartarus trash. He's going to be below Drew though, because he's just super, super evil, right? Maybe I should put Drew here because at least she's not like a hardcore villain. But she did talk bad about my girl Selena. So that I would actually put her there. Next, we have a character that I'm 100% about to mispronounce their name. Enchiladas, whatever. The giant, like the big crazy giant that they fight at the very end of the book. He sucks. He spent the whole book manipulating Piper, which was annoying. He kidnapped Piper's dad, which was actually a plot that annoyed me greatly. So he sucks on a lot of different levels. Guess what? Tartarus trash. This is crazy. This is a lot of people in the bottom tier. I didn't expect to have this many characters down there. But also this book had like a lot of villains. So it's not like it's not a crazy take, is it? Whatever. Next, we have Festus. And guys, you can call me crazy for this. You can call me nuts. You can say the I don't know ball. But Festus is going up in God tier. Listen, I love that dragon. Okay? I cried when he died. And I can't wait to get through Son of Neptune so that I can get back to Leo and hopefully see Festus's head on that stupid flying ship that I keep hearing so much about. Okay? And if Festus comes back to life by being put on that ship, I will cry. I will cry again. Okay? I love Festus. I miss him. I cried when he died. Don't mess with me and my boy Festus. Okay? Anyways, next we have Gia. And I think that's how it's pronounced. She's goddess of earth. Don't really know much about her yet. I think she's like the overall villain of like the entire Heroes of Olympus series, I'm pretty sure. But what I do know about her is that she caused Leo to kill his mom. Little baby Leo on accident set a warehouse on fire and killed his mom, and it's all her fault. So guess what? She, boom, goes to the bottom of the list because how dare you? Guess what? Second time I cried reading this book, Leo talking about how his mom died and how it was his fault. It's so fucked up, dude. I hope she dies by the end of this book series. Purely just because for what she did to Leo. Anyways, next we have Coach Hedge, aka Gleason, I think was his name. He was chill. Seeing this art for him though really threw me for a loop because that is just not at all how I was picturing him. I just kind of picture all satyrs to look like Arian now. So for them to give me like a mix of Pedro Pascal and Hephaestus for the art for Coach Hedge, threw me off for sure. But when it comes to Coach Hedge, he is interesting. He's weird. I kind of have like a love-hate relationship with the way that satyrs are described and written in these books now that I think about it. I've talked about it multiple times. I feel like the show does the best job at portraying satyrs out of the show, the book, and the movie, obviously. It kind of reminded me of how Grover can low-key be annoying in the books. Because, like, he's funny, and yeah, he helps save the kids, but he's also really stupid. Not Grover. I'm talking about Hedge right now. So he is gonna get Demigod Diva. But I'll put him in the front of Demigod Diva. Like, he's fun. I'm glad he didn't die. But he's kind of there, and he's also kind of stupid, and he also kind of ruins things sometimes. So, middle of the road, I'd say, for Coach Hedge. Next, we have Jake Mason. He was, like, the leader of the Hephaestus cabin, and then he eventually, of course, passes it to Leo by the end of the book. Not much to say about him. I feel bad for him that he's all in casts, but he seems pretty chill. And he's really nice to Leo. He gives cabin leader over to Leo by the end of the book, so that's pretty cool of him. So guess what? He also gets a spot in Demigod Divas. And I know that this tier list, like this section, does say Demigod Divas, but that's more or less for alliteration. Besides Coach Hedge, I know that everybody in this section is a demigod, but you don't have to be a demigod to end up in this tier. Like, the Demigod Diva is just for alliteration purposes. Anyways, moving on, next we have Juno, or Hera, depending on how you want to talk to her. I have mixed feelings on Juno/Hera. First of all, every time I read her name in the book as Juno, I start singing Sabrina Carpenter's song in my head, so that was difficult. But here's where my love-hate relationship comes from. I was really glad, actually, that The Lost Hero did a lot more with the characters of Hera and Aphrodite/Aphrodite's children, because I feel like a lot of the goddesses, like Hera, like Aphrodite, kind of don't get a lot of recognition in the original Percy Jackson books. Like, the only goddess that really gets any sort of recognition is Athena, and that's because Annabeth is a daughter of Athena. So I really enjoyed seeing more from Hera. Even though she's kind of crazy, I still enjoyed her being there. She was fun. She added to a lot of the mystery and a lot of the intrigue in the book. And I think she's going to continue being a character in the Heroes of Olympus series, because from what I've read so far of Son of Neptune, she has already shown up. So is she like the nicest character? No, she's kind of crazy. And I don't really know where her character is going to go. But call me crazy, I'm putting her up in Half-Blood, Half-Best. I just think her character does a lot for the plot, and I appreciate that, if that makes sense. She's like kind of pulling all the strings, which is cool, but you know, on the other side of that coin, she is the reason why I end up having so many questions when I'm reading this book, and sometimes if I have too many questions, I get very irritated, so she can sometimes annoy me, and she's not the nicest to the demigods, but like I said, I think she does a lot for the plot, so I'm putting her a little higher than I probably normally would. Next, we have Chione. She is the daughter of Boreas, and pun intended, pardon my French, she's kind of a bitch. But unfortunately, she is also kind of a diva. Like, being an ice queen, like, look at her outfit. She's kind of a diva. However, unfortunately, by the end of the book, she is much more of a bigger villain than you think she is at the beginning. So the amount of villain that she has does unfortunately outweigh her divaness. So she gets to go right next to her daddy in Miserably Mortal. She's also kind of rude to Leo. So you know how I feel about people rude to Leo. Bottom of the tier list. Next we have Lityerses. I don't fucking know how to pronounce his name, so I'm just gonna say Lit. He is the son of King Midas. He seems to be a pretty good fighter. I remember Jason saying he was like all offense, no defense. But in the end, he gets turned to gold, and that's kind of lame. And I don't know if I'm ever gonna see him again. But he does have character art, which makes me think that we will see him again. Girl, I don't know. He's lame, and he lost his fight. So we're going to put him at the end of Miserably Mortal. Sorry. And also, as far as I'm concerned, he is made of solid gold right now. So what are you going to do about it? Next, we have Lupa. And I don't really know why I added her to this tier list. I just felt like I needed to because she was already mentioned in Son of Neptune in just like the brief amount of the book that I've already read. I think she like trains the Roman demigods or something like that. She's a wolf, so that's fun. And she did deliver the line where she calls Jason their saving grace. And honestly, that line in and of itself is enough to get her a spot in Demigod Diva for me. I'm sorry. That line was just too good. And I remember vividly reading that line and being like, Grace? Like, Thalia? So that was a really good moment in the book, and she delivered that for me, so she does unfortunately get bumped up into the diva category. Next, we have Media. Once again, a word that I don't know if I'm pronouncing correctly, but I digress. She, like, hijacked a mall and was showing our little trio around and, like, confusing them. She can charm speak, so Piper saw right through her. She is a villain, but she is also a diva. She's also very much a diva. This one's tricky because, like I said, this book kind of has, what, like 40 billion villains? I do remember her scene, though, and her scene was fun. It was really fun seeing Piper shine in that scene. I think that scene really helped me like Piper more as a character at that point in the book. Similar to Keone, we kind of have she's a little bit of a diva, but she's also a villain, so, like, which one weighs a little more? I think she's gonna go into Miserably Mortal, but she's gonna go to the front because out of all the villains that are in this list, like, I don't know, her scene was the most fun to me. Next, we have King Midas. And outside of the brief initial excitement of being like, oh, King Midas, I know who that is, moment, kind of sucks. Kind of sucks, and also a little bit of a waste of time. And also, what? I know he's not the reason that Festus, like, stops working and dies, but it did happen in his front lawn. So he is going to go into Tartarus trash. I'll put him at the front just because his cameo was like, oh, exciting. But other than that, it was just like, okay. And next we have Nessa. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but since we are in the year of Wicked, I will be calling her Nessa. She is a daughter of Hephaestus. So once again, breaking the stereotype of if you are a female, you get a female godly parent. She is a female and she has a male godly parent. So I love that. I also feel a very close connection, I think, to most children of Hephaestus. And I learned that when reading The Lost Hero. It was something I think I've always had, but I really came to that realization with Leo existing. And I talk about it probably ad nauseum in my reading vlog. But I really liked Nessa. She was fun. I hope whenever we get back to the characters in The Lost Hero, like, I get to see more of her. Like, I hope her and Leo have more scenes together. I think she's a fun new addition. Now, she's not quite there too much. I feel like if she was in the book just a little bit more, I would have enough reason to put her in Half Blood, Half Best, but she is going to be at the very front of Demigod Divas, just because I love Children of Hephaestus. Moving on, we have the first of our main trio of this book in this tier list, Piper. I had a back and forth love-hate relationship with the character of Piper in this book. It is not my favorite trope in books or movies when a character is, like, being blackmailed to keep a secret from her best friends, and this character just keeps the secret, being like, oh, my friends would never understand. Oh, they'd hate me. They'd hate me if they ever found out. But, like, when you know that the friends would be 100% fine if they just told them what was going on. I kind of had that issue with Piper. And lo and behold, eventually in the book, when she told Jason and Leo that she was being blackmailed by a giant, they understood. they were understanding and they were like, Piper, we don't hold that against you. So it just made my issue with that worse. But that's a personal thing. That's just a trope that I don't like. I also, we'll get into this more in a second. I couldn't give two rats' asses about her dad. And that was a lot of her character in the book. So that was exhausting. Like, they kept giving me these flashbacks to get me to care about her dad, and it just wasn't working for me personally. So she also did not have that going for her. However, on the other side of things, like I mentioned earlier, I really liked that she is a child of Aphrodite. I thought that it was really cool to see a child of Aphrodite in a different light. I think she brought a lot to that cabin and the kind of characteristics that children of Aphrodite can have. And also, I like that she stood up to Drew at the end, because as you can tell, I really hate Drew. So it feels weird putting her not in God tier, because I'm so used to doing a tier list for Percy Jackson characters like the original trio, and normally all three trio members would get in the very, very top tier. But although I like Piper overall, there were a couple of things that irritated me a lot. It's not necessarily like her character, but it's like stuff that her character did or had to go through in the book, if that makes sense. So while I really like her, she's gonna go in Half-Blood, half-best. Great character, not my favorite, right? Next we have Zethys. I think that's how you say his name. He's the other son of Boreas. He is obsessed with Piper, and I think he wants his dad to turn them all into ice sculptures. He sucks. He's going down with his brother, but he's going to be above his brother because his brother was disrespectful to Leo. So Zethys is just one spot above his brother. Next, we have Miss Rachel Dare. She was so fun to have in this book for the brief moment that she was. Kind of like Annabeth. Like, it was just fun to see a character that I knew and that I recognized. But something I like a lot about Rachel is that whenever she is around, it's really important. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think she gives us the prophecy of the seven for the first time. I could be misremembering that, but I'm pretty positive she does. I'm going to put her right next to Annabeth. They're equal to me. They were like really fun cameos. I got very excited when they were on the pages of my book. But other than that, you know, they weren't there too much, so there's not much to say. Next, we have Tristan McLean, Piper's father. Guys, if you watched my reading vlog, you know that every single time the book tried to give me a flashback of Piper and her dad, I was just like, I don't care. And I think a big part of that is they were giving me flashbacks at like the beginning of the book to try and get me to care about Piper's relationship with her dad. But the issue with that is that at that point in the book, like, I didn't even care about Piper yet as a character. Like, you were trying to build her relationship with her dad before you even built her relationship with me. You know what I mean? So, like, they kept cutting to these flashbacks of Piper and her dad to make me feel bad that he was kidnapped. But I was like, dog, I don't care about either of these two characters right now. You got to get me to care about Piper first, and then I'll care about Piper and her dad and the fact that her dad's kidnapped. It was just a little too many flashbacks for me. It was a little too much. I did kind of enjoy the resolution at the end. I am a sucker for like a father-daughter relationship. I love my dad. Shout out to my dad. Like, so when they sort of resolved things before they took Tristan's memories away, like, that was very sweet. But that's like a small positive in a general realm of negative for how I feel about the character of Tristan McLean. He is going at like the bottom of miserably mortal, I think. Just because every time he was on my screen, I was like, damn, I don't care. I really don't care. Like, by the third flashback, I was like skimming. I was skimming through the flashback. I was like, I don't care. I really don't care about this. I'm sorry. No offense to Piper. No offense to her dad. Maybe if I ever revisit Lost Hero, like on a reread at some point in my life, if I care a lot about Piper by the end of this whole Heroes of Olympus series, then I'll care about Piper and her dad when I reread it. But on a first-time read, literally could not care less. I was borderline annoyed every time he popped up in the book. Next, we have my Pookie Bear, my son, my best friend, Leo. Guys, I had no idea like which one of these characters I was going to care the most about when I started this book. I barely even knew who the characters were. Like, I didn't even know their last names, right? Leo very quickly became one of my favorite characters just because I think he's funny. And then you give him this very tragic backstory, like about his mom, which I know is a little hypocritical of me to say because I just spent a couple of minutes like trashing on them trying to get me to care about Piper and her dad's relationship. But the difference is that Leo's mom was dead. The difference is that his mom was dead. And then I found out that he thought that it was his fault. And that's like a lot more compelling to me than what they were doing with Piper and Tristan, right? And then you give Leo all of these cool powers. And like I said, like I already feel like a very deep connection to Children of Hephaestus as a daughter of Athena. And every single time I got to a Leo chapter in this book, I was just elated. I was so excited. And I think so far in Son of Neptune, I miss Leo a lot, you guys. I liked him so much. He was easily the best character in this book to me. So he is at the front of God tier. He is number one. He is the top character in this book to me. Next, we have Miss Thalia Grace. Guys, we have talked a couple of times about different characters in this tier list that have been like fun cameos from the past. Really great to see them there. They weren't in the book much, but it was fun nonetheless. Thalia is so different to that, even though she is a cameo and she is only in the book for a short amount of time. The way that her character is introduced by Jason finding out that he's related to her, that was such a gag. That was such a gag for me because I had no idea. That's how little I know about this book series. I literally had no idea. And then her showing up later in the book when the trio like really needed her talking to Jason. We got some more answers about the character of Jason, which we'll get into in a minute because as you can tell, Jason is the only character left to rank in this tier list besides Thalia. It was just so fun to see her, and she was easily like the most fun cameo in the book. And my gut initial reaction is to want to put her in Godlike because I just think Thalia is so cool. Like, it was so fun to see her. She is so badass. I want to put her in God tier. Is that crazy? Like, just the gag of her and Jason being related and her showing up when she does, it really added a lot to the book for me. It added a lot to the character of Jason for me. One downside, she was kind of rude to Leo. I'm not going to dock her too much for that because Leo was trying to hit on her and you can't do that to a Hunter of Artemis. So I think, man, y'all can call me crazy. I think I'm going to put her in God tier. I don't know. That's just how I'm feeling. It was like one of those cameos. Like, okay, if this was a movie, I would feel like I did when Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man shows up. I was really excited when she showed up. And like I mentioned, she answered a lot of my questions that I had about the character of Jason, which leads me into the last person that we need to rank, the one and only Jason Grace. Now, similar to Piper, I had my love-hate relationship with Jason throughout this book. It was very fun and intriguing that the main character of our book, like, had no memories and didn't know who he was, but also at the same time, in a book as big as The Lost Hero is, like, it got to a certain point where I was like, okay, I'm kind of sick of just having all of these questions about his character. I want to get some answers. That's another reason why Juno/Hera is as high as she is, because I feel like whenever she did show up, I kind of got some answers. So Jason was either very intriguing to me or very irritating to me because sometimes I don't like to read things when I don't know what's going on, and that happens a lot with Jason. I just feel like although he's kind of the main character of The Lost Hero, like I still don't really know anything about him. I know he's kind of just like Camp Jupiter's counterpart of Percy Jackson in a way. Like he seems like he's the Percy Jackson of Camp Jupiter, but I just still don't really know him like that, which is crazy to say because I read a whole book where he is one of, if not the main character. So you can say it's crazy, especially because I did put Thalia in God tier, but I'm kind of putting Jason in half blood, half best. Like, I did really enjoy Jason as a character, but there is still so much more that I want to know about him that I just don't know about him yet. And like, kind of like Piper, he did have moments where he was annoying to me. Not necessarily like his character, but just like things he did or things that the book had him do, or just the fact that like I didn't know what was going on. And I was like at the end of the book, and I was like, can I get some answers for the love of God? So I want to put Jason higher, but it just doesn't feel right. Like, he's not on the level of Leo for me. Call me crazy, he's not even on the level of Festus. I love Festus, right? Like, Leo and Festus are both characters that made me cry multiple times while reading this book. So, while it may be crazy to have a dragon at the top above a lot of other characters, like I said, it's my tier list, okay? So let's go ahead and go over our final tier list, starting at the bottom. Tartarus trash. King Midas, he was fun, but he was there. Zethus and Callias, or however you say their names. I remember I called them Tweedledee and Tweedledum. They suck, right? Then you have Dylan. He sucks. He tried to kill all of them right off the bat. Drew, the worst. The absolute worst. And I wish her nothing but the worst. Then we have Enchiladas, like they call him in the book. He also sucked. And he is at fault for kidnapping Tristan McLean, which was probably my least favorite part of the entire book. So, double whammy. He sucks times 2. Then at the bottom, we have Gia, who, of course, is at the bottom because she caused Leo to kill his mom. So, at the bottom is where she deserves. Moving on up, Miserably Mortal. Kind of just all the villains that are there, but they're like, meh, you know what I mean? We've got Medea, she's fine. Aeolus, crazy dude. Boreas, he's fine. His daughter Keone, she's only a little bit higher than Tartarus trash because she is very diva in my mind. Like, I just love a good ice princess. Sorry, what can I say? But she does still suck at the end of the day, so she's towards the back of Miserably Mortal. Then we've got Lit. He was there for like 5 minutes. And then at the bottom, you've got Tristan McLean, and that's just simply because every time he was in the book, I was kind of annoyed. Moving on up to Demigod Divas. Kind of the best row, low-key. We've got Nessa, we've got Coach Hedge, Butch, Clovis, Jake Mason, and last but not least, Lupa. Kind of just characters that are all very run-of-the-mill. That's why they're in the middle of the tier list. But they're fun, and I wouldn't mind seeing more of any of these characters, really. Next, we have Half-Blood, Half-Best. Characters that are really, really great parts of the book. They might have little things that annoy me, or they're just not like in the book a lot, but they're there, and they're not bad. We've got Jason, literally the main character of the book. He still kind of confuses me as a character, but I am really looking forward to seeing more of him. We've got Piper. She had her ups and downs with me throughout the book, but by the end, I ended up really liking her. And also, I like Jason and Piper together, but apparently that's a crazy hot take, so I can't wait to see if that changes as I read the rest of the books. But I like Piper. I like what she does for Children of Aphrodite. By the end of the book, when she stands up to Drew, I like her a lot. Then we've got Annabeth. Wasn't really in too much of the book, but it was really fun when she showed up. We've got Rachel, kind of the same deal as Annabeth. It's always fun to see characters like that from the original book series, like, to show up. Then, surprisingly, we have Juno/Hera. Does she deserve to probably be in Miserably Mortal? Yes. But I just feel like she's very important to the story. And she's going to keep being important to the story. And when she showed up, I did kind of get answers in a way, even though it is her fault that Jason doesn't have his memories. So she does kind of suck for that. It's hard to explain. I just feel like she's important enough that I like having her up in this second highest tier. Then we have God tier. I'm obviously very picky. God tier is not for everybody. You have to be a very good character to me to get into God tier. And that's what we have. At the bottom of God tier, we have Thalia Grace. And listen, is she in the book a lot? No. Similar to Annabeth and Rachel, she's not really in The Lost Hero all that much. But her cameo, I think, weighs a lot more than like Annabeth and Rachel. Just the discovery alone of finding out that Jason and Thalia are siblings gagged me so hard. Like, that was one of the best like book reading moments I've had in a while, right? Like, the reaction I had speaks for itself. And then when she showed up, when she was talking to Jason, I really enjoyed it. I love the character of Thalia. Like, while she was just a cameo, like some other characters, her cameo had a lot of weight to it. So that's why she is up in God tier. Then we have Festus, and I know you guys are probably going to call me crazy for that, right? But I don't care. First of all, I love animals. Second of all, I get very attached to inanimate objects. For example, I have this like purple cat crystal that I bought in New Orleans like last year, and I lost it recently, and like I have cried over it multiple times. I get very, very attached to inanimate objects. I dropped my Owala water bottle the other day down the stairs, and now it's all dented and scraped up at the bottom. And surprisingly, I didn't cry over this, but I got really sad. So I get very attached to animals, and I get very attached to inanimate objects, and that is how I felt about Festus. When Festus died, like that scene was shockingly really, really, really sad to me. Like, I don't want to have to read that again. I was like, this is really, really sad. So then, of course, if I have Festus all the way up here, you best believe my number one character in the entire book is Mr. Leo Valdez. I really, not only did I not expect to love Leo as much as I did, I didn't expect to love like any of the new characters in this series as much as I love Leo. Like, it was really a shock to me that I felt so strongly about one of these characters, because I do feel so partial to like the original Percy Jackson characters and like the original trio. Like, I didn't expect any of these characters in one book to meet the characterization of like Percy or Annabeth or Grover to me, but Leo did. He managed to do that in one book, which is very impressive. And of course, like I have said a couple of times, Leo helped me realize that I think as a daughter of Athena, I have a very big soft spot and tend to take more of a liking to children of Hephaestus. That kind of helps explain why Tyson is one of my favorite characters in the original Percy Jackson series. Now, I know Tyson is not technically a child of Hephaestus, but like Hephaestus does take him in because he's a Cyclops. So he's like 50% Poseidon, 50% Hephaestus in my mind. I get into it a lot more in my reading vlog, like the connection that I think children of Athena and children of Hephaestus have with each other. So if you're curious to hear about that, you should go check out my reading vlog. But long story short, Leo swept me off my feet as a character. I adore him. And like I said, I am starting Son of Neptune. I have already started it. I've read a little bit of it, and I miss him. Like, his absence is noticed to me, which is crazy to say because you would think that having Percy Jackson back in Son of Neptune would be enough for me, but it isn't. I miss Leo, and that's crazy. I've known him for one book. But anyways, this is my completed tier list, and that pretty much does it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I love making tier lists. They are such fun videos to do because like I normally script YouTube videos, like a brief outlining of points I want to hit, because I have ADHD, and if I don't write things down, I will forget them. But for tier lists, I kind of just get to go unscripted and kind of just speak off the top of my head, which can sometimes bite me in the butt. But nonetheless, tier list videos are very laid back for me, and I love doing them. And I can't wait to finish Son of Neptune and do a tier list for that. And hopefully maybe continue that tier list per book into the rest of the Heroes of Olympus series as I read it. Like I mentioned, if you want to know what I think about Son of Neptune like right now and you don't want to wait probably like 2 to 3, maybe 4 weeks until I can get the reading vlog onto my YouTube, make sure you check out my Patreon. As of right now, as of me filming this video at least, the day 1 update for Son of Neptune reading vlog is on my Patreon. It's like the first couple chapters. Not to mention, you get a whole lot of other stuff on my Patreon when you join, so go check that out. The link is in my description. Let me know what you think of my tier list, but make sure you let me know politely what you think of my tier list. Let me know if there's any characters that you would switch around. If you think I put anybody way too low or way too high, let me know. But don't give any spoilers. Remember, this is based off of just the Lost Hero. If you go into my comments and you're like, Gia actually ends up saving the entire universe, she's the best character of the series, don't do that, because I don't know yet. I haven't finished the series, okay? So this is only based on The Lost Hero. So tell me what you think. Based on that, don't spoil the rest of the series, okay? I'm dead serious. So far, no one has been evil enough to do that in any of my comment sections, so shout out to you guys for that. I really appreciate it. If you're new here, if you're a Percy Jackson fan and this is your first video you've seen of mine, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube. I post a lot of Percy Jackson videos along with other content as well, but predominantly Percy Jackson. And of course, you can check out all of my other Percy Jackson videos. But that pretty much does it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.